Greetings, everyone. As you're filing in, want to welcome you and just have a few opening remarks, right? So, thank you for joining us all today for the IPC IG Chairs webinar series, Must Know for Psychologists Working in IPC Teams, hosted by the Society for Health Psychology's Integrated Primary Care Interest Group and co-sponsored by the Society of Clinical Psychology, APA Division 12. I'm Chase Gross, and before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to share. So first, this and all of the Society for Health Psychology's virtual presentation are offered as a free benefit of membership in the Society for Health Psychology. So if you see value in this and kind of are getting some useful information, please invite your colleagues, bring a friend, please invite your students to ensure kind of unlimited access to future presentations and other society benefits. For more information, you can visit the Society's website at societyforhealthpsychology.org to get some more information. Second, as you may have heard just a moment ago, this event is being recorded. So anyone who speaks during this presentation, for example, to ask a question or to put something into the chat, is agreeing to be recorded and is granting permission for that to be posted on our website. And third, the webinar is eligible for one continuing education credit under the Society of Clinical Psychology Division 12 sponsorship. The CE evaluation information will be sent via email to all who attend the full presentation shortly after this webinar, right? So we're going to leave that evaluation portal up for 1 week until 5 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, July 18th, 2024. The CE certificates will be sent via email within 5 to 10 business days after the evaluation period closes, and it'll be sent to the email at which you enrolled in this session. So all participants are invited to also submit feedback via the evaluation, even if you're not seeking credit. Questions will be taken at the end of the presentation, but during the presentation, we still invite you to put in questions into the chat, which will be monitored, and we'll kind of reach out to people and ask you to ask those questions and unmute yourself at the end of the presentation. All right, so for today's speaker, right? So for, kind of thinking back how these types of things are so helpful. As I started in my career, day one, only psychologist in the system, probably the only health psychologist that I'm aware of in the region. I was like, all right, I have the big job. Now what? So kind of to reorient me, I sought so many resources and contacted so many people. One of those resources was the PCBH Corner, right? So it helped orient me, helped guide me, kind of gave me some must knows for my new job, right? So today, I hope you discover some of your own must knows. And I want to hand it off to our speaker. Please, you have the floor.
All right. Yeah. I'm so excited to be here with you guys. I know this is a huge topic, must knows for psychologists working on integrated primary care. We know that 1 hour isn't going to be able to do it. So I made sure to put lots of links in here, and we have material, we have content. I do feel comfortable, going a little bit off course if we need to. It's not really off course, but if there's a question or something that's relevant, I'm fully prepared for that too. I've spent the last really 11 years of my career all in on trying to figure out what psychologists who are working on integrated primary care teams need to know. So I feel very comfortable with the material. So the point being is use the chat, ask a lot of questions. If it's organic and it makes sense to answer them in the moment, we will. If not, we can wait till the end. Definitely bear with me a little bit. I've been nursing a pretty tough upper respiratory illness. So I have my water here. I'll do my best. It was supposed to be me and my partner in crime, Dr. David Bauman, but we actually are having our APA site visit at our day job for our our doctoral internship. So we're hoping to get that 10-year accreditation. So Dave is out meeting with the whatever they're considered, the eyes and ears of the commission, as they say. So he did help create the material that's in this webinar. So I still gave him credit on the title sheet here, but it's our title slide, but it's only going to be me today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a licensed psychologist by trade. I've been working as a BHC for over a decade. I did 1 year internship at an FQHC called Health Point in Washington State, and that was from 2013 to 2014. And then the rest of my time I've spent at Central Washington Family Medicine as my main clinic, and the organization is called Community Health of Central Washington. And I have my 10-year anniversary literally next month. So it's been really cool to be in the same place for the last 10 years. And starting in 2016, myself and Dr. Bauman, we kind of did a split position where I was the director of primary care behavioral health for any core behavioral health consultants, and then he took on the education side. Both him and I, that's where we get the name. I know it's very creative. Beachy Bauman Consulting. We have our consulting firm with just the two of us, with kind of the same aims of what happens in our day job, helping people to learn to do PCBH and to work in medical settings. If you've ever been to any presentations of mine or Dr. Bauman's, we always encourage folks to rumble, ask the tough questions. That's the only way that we're all going to get better. Who's to say that anybody is right or anybody is necessarily wrong? It's just all about what works, what doesn't work, and trying different iterations. So if I say something for the next 50 minutes and you're like, oh man, I disagree with that, or that hasn't been my experience, it will not hurt my feelings to throw that into the chat. I think it makes us all better when we have real talk. One of the criticisms that myself and Dr. Bauman have had about the integrated care field since we started was this idea of making things look easy. Well, you just do 1, 2, 3, 3 steps and you're good to go. And that's not how the real world works. So we want the tough questions. It would not hurt my feelings in the slightest. And then a lot of folks, as Chase alluded to, we have tons and tons of free content on YouTube. We have, we're, I guess, up to 83 PCBH corners, and we have multiple demonstration videos, training videos. So definitely check it out on X, or, formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. We have a lot of free content that we post. Here's some of our information. You can find us. Definitely feel free to email, cold email. That doesn't hurt my feelings either. I actually like it. So if you have a question, it might just become the next PCBH corner. And then I put in a bunch of playlists because, like I said, there's no way we're going to be able to figure out all the must-knows for working on an integrated primary care team in the next, like I said, 50 minutes, or we're probably down to 45 minutes now. So I put together a lot of playlists, and you can see there's the PCBH corners specifically, and then I curated another list for clinicians, which is the BHC Essentials. And then I have one on leadership for those of you who are directors or in leadership positions out there. And then for our brand newbies, the onboarding intro part 1 for folks that are getting a little bit more seasoned and making your way through the initial onboarding. We have the advanced onboarding, and then another playlist for clinicians, very clinician focused. Okay, for today's webinar, I think that would be a question for Steph and Chase of whether or not they get the PowerPoint. I have sent them all of my stuff. So I'm cool with you guys having whatever. So however, Steph and Chase, y'all do it. As far as our learning objectives for today, we're going to be going over a couple of mnemonics here. We're going to go over gather and the 4 C's of primary care, and that's going to guide our role and how we see ourselves as psychologists on that integrated primary care team. We're going to go over more than three, but hopefully you'll be able to name at least three key differences between a psychologist working on the integrated primary care team versus a traditional role, and then at least three key strategies. There's going to be more than three, but you know, you want to, if you can name three of them at the end of the presentation, that'd be really awesome for gaining buy-in on the integrated primary care team. So honestly, in a nutshell, this webinar is kind of a webinar about learning how to be helpful. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, isn't that what I went to school for? Isn't that why I became a psychologist? Isn't that why I do what I do, is to be helpful? And yes, it is. But the stuff that's in this presentation, I really wish I would have known a little bit earlier on in that journey, because I felt like I knew a lot of information, kind of how Chase was saying on his first day. Like, I have all this information. I want to help. I want to do all this stuff. And so you kind of come in guns a-blazing, and that's not bad, and that's not wrong. That's a great thing. But having a little bit more guidance, a little bit more direction, a little bit more of a conceptualization of how am I going to approach this role to really become a core member of the team. So, that's why we have these presentations, is there's iterations, and hopefully in 10 years, there's somebody giving a presentation saying, hey, I wish I would have known even more when I started in this role. So we're gonna give it our best shot to figure out if any of this stuff is going to be helpful to help you all and helping yourselves and students that you might have to be as helpful as possible in this role. So I want to start off with a definition that's taken from the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. It's a definition of what high quality primary care should look like. And I just absolutely love this definition. So this isn't anything about to do with integrated care per se. This is just kind of saying, hey, this is what we think high quality primary care looks like. Primary care provides comprehensive, person-centered, relationship-based care that considers the needs and preferences of individuals, families, and communities. Primary care is unique in healthcare in that it is designed for everyone to use throughout their lives, from healthy children to older adults with multiple comorbidities and people with disabilities. People in countries and health systems with high quality primary care enjoy better health outcomes and more health equity. I think that this definition gives a really awesome North Star for what we want to be about when we join the integrated care team. I want to help the integrated care team to do this. I feel like a psychologist has so many of these skills, so much of the training and knowledge to be able to contribute to this definition. So this is what I use as my guiding North Star. I don't use necessarily the psychology field per se, not that it's not, deeply a part of who I am. But when I walk into the primary care team and into that setting, this now becomes my goal. My goal isn't to treat people with depression. My goal isn't to help ameliorate anxiety symptoms. My goal is to join this safety net, join this system to help people have better health outcomes and more health equity by being comprehensive, person-centered, relationship-based. Now, you might be thinking, well, why do we have to make that distinction? I think to be able, if you're going to be the best teammate that you possibly can, again, this is in my opinion, so you can take it or leave it. We have to have something that's a little bit bigger than just, our silo or our field or, the area that we are experts in. We really want to know where the whole system is trying to move towards. And so I think it's a very inspiring way when I walk in every day that my job isn't just about treating depression or anxiety or from a health psychology perspective to help people function better with diabetes. That it's bigger than that, right? It's being a part of the community, being a safety net, contributing to all the health outcomes, more health equity. So I would definitely recommend if you haven't done this already, and maybe a lot of folks, I recognized a lot of names on here from colleagues, and I know folks that are on listservs and putting out books and articles and everything. So y'all may have already done a lot of this, but I definitely encourage folks that whatever organization that you're working in to really highly know what the overall mission is of that organization, the goals, the vision, not what you necessarily just want to do for integrated care, but like, why does your organization that you work at, why does it exist? So definitely look up the mission statement. Talk to your chiefs. What is, why does your organization exist? And what's considered core business? We at our day job at Community Health of Central Washington, I don't feel like we really turned a corner as far as being a member of the team until everybody, including boots on the ground as well as leadership, knew that our mission was their mission. Yes, I have a specific, field of study and expertise, but my mission is your mission. I still remember our CMO coming to us and they were going over the quality metrics, things like blood pressure, diabetes, immunizations, depression, and saying, well, hey, you're probably just interested in the depression side. I said, no, I want to know all the quality metrics because I think that I might have something to do with, you know, everything that's being expected of the team. And even if there's not something I could directly contribute to, just knowing that I can help guide patients. Maybe we do reverse handoffs. Maybe we get them on the schedule for a medical visit. So I really kind of explained to him that as a BHC, my mission is their mission. So that's something I would think about with, do you have your team and your integrated care vision? How can you take that and align it with your organization's mission? So that's going to get you a lot of buy-in. That's going to get folks seeing you not as other, not as, oh, that's nice to have over here. Isn't that so great that we have some psychologists who can handle things when patients start crying? But rather, it's kind of, you know, embedded into the DNA that a PA, an NP, a DO, an MD, a nurse, a medical assistant, a psychologist, a social worker, that we're actually kind of all going towards the same mission. If anybody has any thoughts on that, you can definitely put them into the chat box, maybe a way in which that's been successful, or maybe, if you hadn't thought about this before, what your thoughts are. Is that something that you think you could do? Is to talk with your one up, and maybe you could talk with their one up to kind of, get that alignment. But I think it starts there. The other thing that we're going to need is a more North Star, more vision of where are we headed. And the 4 C's of primary care, of the primary care agencies wanting to be places where this is where patients get their first contact. When something comes up, they think about their primary care providers. When they have continuity of care, right? Like over the course of their life, longitudinally, that people come to their medical home. If you need to go to a specialist, you're going to come first through your PCP, and that's where that coordination of care comes in. And as many places have learned, having as much comprehensive care as possible. That's why a lot of organizations are moving a lot more things into primary care, such as X-ray, labs, pharmacy, BHC. We're recognizing that folks want a one-stop shop if at all possible. So primary care as a whole operates from this perspective of these 4 C's. And we want to know that thoroughly and completely when we are coming into this role. Now, you might be thinking that the 4Cs, what does this have to do with Gather, which is kind of widely known as the best way to conceptualize or define the role of a behavioral health consultant working on an integrated primary care team. If you think about Gather, it really is, if you were going to take a behavioral health consultant and make them a core member of the primary care team, this is the type of stuff you would see. So you would see somebody being a generalist. Because if we're specialized, that's not primary care. How are we going to help people if every single situation it's like, oh, I'm not really qualified to do that. Oh, I can't help with that. Oh, I only work with this age to this age. At a certain point, people are going to recognize that you really can't be a regular member of the team because you're too specialized. We want to be accessible. You know, when something happens and you need to get into your medical doctor, they don't say, "Oh, okay, so you have bronchitis. We'll see you in 6 weeks." No, part of primary care is to be able to get them in and have same day visits. So same thing with BHCs. We want to be accessible. We don't want to be 6 weeks from now, or heck, 6 months from now. We want to be team oriented. I know that's kind of like the whole presentation. But you know, again, if we want to be functioning members of this primary care team, we can't be off somewhere else. We need to be highly productive. And I know that that's been very controversial. Some folks have changed at the high impact. I'm not afraid of that term productive because I think it is what it is. I think it means we see a lot of patients. Our PCPs see a lot of patients because there's a lot of people who are sick with acute and chronic illness. Same thing with BHC. We should be seeing a lot of patients because there's a lot of folks who need support in the behavioral realm, whether it's dealing with chronic conditions or dealing with more, you know, mental health conditions, and then just all the subclinical stuff that happens as being a human, phase of life, relationships, new jobs, just all the things that we experience. You know, I want to be able to help as many patients as possible, and I want to be able to help them as much as I can now. Again, not 6 months from now. Being an educator, yeah, for patients, huge resource for patients, and also a huge resource for our team. I think it goes bi-directionally. I'm constantly asking our medical providers. That's how I got so upskilled. And, you know, if you want to quiz me on A1C, I could tell you, you know, all the categories. I could tell you, you know, sleep apnea. I could tell you thyroid. I could tell you all this information off the top of my head because of, you know, this coursework and the studies, but also asking questions of my medical providers. Now, that doesn't mean that you operate out of your competency. Just saying, if I hear that somebody has, you know, an A1C of 11, I just know I'm very nervous about that. Wow, we got a lot of work to do. That's kind of what I mean by that. And a lot of that happened. It was really, you know, it's one thing to learn it in a book. It's one thing to learn it on a webinar or a course. It's another talking about a situation with one of your medical colleagues and they're explaining to you what happens when somebody's A1C is 11. All right. Michaela has a comment. Agreed. However, where I work, psychologists and IBH are treated as a place to send referrals for mental health that otherwise they would have to send out in the community. It's hard to implement a true integrated care model, at least where I am. Oh, yeah. I mean, 1,000,000,000%. 1,000,000,000%. And that's, I think, why it's so important that either you as a leader or you get with your leadership about figuring out how you're going to talk to the medical leadership and explain that their goals are your goals. You're just kind of seeing something from a slightly different angle. But yeah, this isn't about treating mental health conditions only. This is so much bigger than that. All right, so we have the organization that we're working in, knowing what their mission and their goals are, aligning the integrated care mission with those, understanding core tenets of primary care, which you can find in the 4Cs, understanding the core tenets of PCBH, which you can find in Gather. So all that information is really foundational, and that's going to, like I said, be your North Star as you go, as you progress and work in your role. So for me, I think one of the biggest differences as like trained as a traditional psychologist is being able to get something done versus getting everything done. That was a hard transition 11 years ago for me to make. It was hard to wait, so we're going to jump in there, we're going to get something done. That was just a brand new lens. But when you start taking that approach that you don't have to do everything and that everything doesn't need to be 100% fully fleshed out before you can start helping somebody, it frees you up so much to be able um, to get buy-in from patients, from your colleagues. When they see that you are ready to jump in and get something done, support the medical team in some type of way, your colleagues will come back and be like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea that you could help with this. I had no idea that you could help with that. I had no idea that you had expertise in this and that." It's so liberating as a clinician that you don't have to know, is this MDD recurrent, moderate? You don't need to know every single detail about a person's diagnosis before getting started and getting to help them. And that was one of the biggest transitions that I had to make. And it's one of the biggest transitions I see with our interns when they come on board, as well as in our consulting work. Ooh, this is an interesting, on top of a above mentioned situation, I think that is also difficult for my practice to navigate how much we can provide to patients who are not primary care patients because our area, inner city, has less resource of mental health providers. We receive many requests from community to do psychotherapy, and some of those patients are not our primary care patients. Yeah, that's going to be an organization by organization situation and call. However, in our system, we do not work with any patients who are not primary care patients. It's part of the informed consent process. It's part of our DNA that the services are embedded within medical into their just regular primary care services. So yeah, if you're seeing folks from the community and you're doing kind of a hybrid, like partial primary care, but then also specialty, it's going to make it ridiculously complex. That's why we have chosen in our system to have it be a closed system. Think about how PCPs handle getting something done versus addressing absolutely everything in a single visit. Yes, Rosemary. Yes. For example, most PCPs are not going to give a new med for every symptom a patient brings up, but determine where to start an intervention, see how it goes before doing the next thing, 1,000,000,000%. So this is actually a really good segue because I've been refining and making this chart uh, for, I guess, for 11 years now. Because there's an original chart that has like a BHC versus a therapist, and it would have like a BHC 25 to 30 minutes, therapist, 50 minutes. And I just didn't feel like those charts told enough of the story. So I'm going to try this on you guys. And I've added even more into it for the today's topic with some strategies. I want to see what you think. So as far as scope, if I'm going to be an effective member of the primary care team, I got to figure out how I'm going to help as many of those people as possible. So starting with being a generalist. And who does medical serve? Now that becomes the population that I serve. And knowing that, you have to understand that a lot of folks who are seeing you might not be in the preparation or action stage of change. They might not have been people looking for therapy. So you have to adjust to that. And you have to be ready for working with folks who maybe only agreed to meet with you because of a chronic pain contract. They only agreed to meet with you because their doctor insisted upon it. So that is a huge difference. You can't go into your BHC visits assuming that everybody is here and ready to work on their behavioral or mental health. I think the other thing that is different is thinking about the whole population and thinking about patients and caring about patients that you don't see as much as the patients that you are seeing. One of the things, we're onboarding our brand new interns right now in our APA accredited doctoral internship. And one of the things that they all admit to is really difficult right now is if you're working with somebody to end that visit maybe a few minutes early in order to go get a warm handoff. Or a warm handoff comes through at 4 o'clock and you have a 4 o'clock scheduled patient. In our system, we take the warm handoff. And they're like, wow, this just goes against everything that I've ever been taught. And I was like, you got to remember, we care about the people that we don't see or that we might see just as much as the ones that we do. Because if somebody, most of the time in our system, if they're scheduled, they've seen a BHC before. So they've had doses of BHC before. With a warm handoff, it's possible they've never met with us before. We don't know what the PCP had to do to convince them to say yes today. And so it might mean letting the front desk know, hey, I'm going to be 20 minutes. Can you tell the 4 o'clock patient that I'm running a little bit behind? I'll be there in about 20 minutes, give or take. And you go and you take the warm handoff. And in that warm handoff visit, you give them a dose. Maybe it's a little bit shorter than usual. Maybe you go 10 to 15 minutes or 10 to 20 minutes instead of maybe you wanted to have 25 or 30 minutes, but you have to do something that's a little bit more abbreviated. Because the way we see it is both people are going to get doses of BHC. The person who came at 4 can wait till 4:20. The person in the warm handoff gets seen. Now, maybe both visits are only 20 minutes, but I don't know about you all. If you've been working in primary care, you can get a lot done in 20 minutes. I'd rather 2 people get 20 minutes than one person getting 27 or 28 minutes and the other going without, because we care about the whole population. We don't know what that PCP has tried to do to get that patient to say yes to us. And that person might just be ready for a change. And if you have them come back, they might lose their nerve. So the scope and the accessibility are very, very, very important. You know, juxtaposing that with the therapist role, specialized to condition. You know, the main person that you're worried about is the client who's in front of you. And again, that's not wrong or that's not bad. Of course, the patient in front of me is important, but I'm also very concerned about the whole population. And I want to get as deep into the reach as possible, the same way our PCPs do. I mean, ask your PCPs how many patients are on their panel. The idea behind primary care is to be able to reach a lot of folks and have it be longitudinal and have it be the place that they come when something comes up. So yeah, that means we got to do things differently. And a lot of those things are very different than what we were trained in being a psychologist. We need to sit in the medical pods. Wherever the action is, that's where you want to sit. You need a clear warm handoff process. We use Microsoft Teams. We have 3 minutes to respond with our ETA. Don't send back to your team something obscure like I'm in a visit. That doesn't help them. Tell them how long you're going to be until you can come out and meet with another patient. There's no intake, in a traditional form. We do a love work play interview, which I have on this PowerPoint, which I can jump to real quick. I'll jump back. Okay. This is our love work play contextual interview. So when we're meeting with patients, these are the questions that we're asking. I have tons and tons of videos on YouTube and on those playlists that have sample contextual interviews. I think we're up to like 6 or 7 sample demonstrations. And those are all demonstrations. They are not role played. Role play being, kind of scripted. These are complete, organic demonstration videos. If you don't have time for the full contextual interview, then this is the contextual interview light. And this is, if you have 10, 12 minutes on a warm handoff, this is where I'd absolutely start. Living situation, relationship, family, friends as part of like who's part of their inner circle, what they're doing for income, what's important to them. And then once you get that information, you can absolutely get something done and craft a little plan for them to get started with. All right. I sometimes struggle with how to shorten my contextual. Oh, but I only have 15 minutes so that the patient still leaves with a plan. What parts of the contextual interview? Hey, look at us. Yeah, the contextual interview light is where I always go to. Yeah, this is population being as concerned with the person in front of you as are. Yes, yep. Yeah, so we have the contextual interview, we have the contextual interview light. This does take a hot second to get facile in. I don't know how many I had to do, but it probably took me about 6 months before I got really comfortable. I was trained in the 5 A's, and there's nothing wrong with the 5 A's, but the contextual approach is it just works better for me. It probably took me a solid 6 months to try to get facile in it. But now the contextual interview is tattooed into my brain. I tell all of our interns to tattoo it into their brain. Okay. Um, we did a PCBH corner on visit or bust. That means that we don't do meet and greets. And if we do, it's very, very rare. We try if we're face to face with a patient, they say that they're open to like getting something done, even if it's an 8-minute visit where you go over love, work, play. The cool thing about it is you are a member of that team. So even if for some reason you had 8 minutes and it wasn't even enough for like, a real plan, a real plan, but you got somebody's love, work, play, that's stuff that you can share with your medical team, knowing who they live with, knowing who their inner circle is, knowing what they do for income, knowing what really is important to them, passions, hobbies, fun, what their interests are. That can give you you and your PCP, a huge breakthrough on how to help them. So to me, nothing is ever wasted. There's never a wasted visit. Even if we can't do everything that we wanted to do in a visit, that information is just going to be circulating to the team. And it's so fun to be able to learn about patients because, like we said, we want it to be person centered. Knowing what hobbies and interests and what makes people tick, what moves people can be extremely, extremely important to treatment adherence. Being able to share that with your medical team is very, very, very helpful. When I only have time for a very focused discussion, I would likely let the patient guide the agenda. And I can help to focus it. I know we only have 10 minutes, but what most important for to discuss? Yeah, I mean, every folks could do different approaches. If I have 10 minutes, I'm doing the CI light. But there's lots of different ways to skin a cat. For me, it's the return on investment of asking those questions. Has been working for the last 11 years. But yeah, there's tons of ways to skin a cat. Me personally, I would say something like, hey, it's so awesome that we have 10 minutes together. Is it cool if I ask you some questions to help me and your medical team know you a little bit better? Because that's going to help us when we set goals in the future. And knowing what's important to you is super helpful for knowing your health goals. And then they say, yeah, sure, that's cool. And then I jump right into, hey, tell me about your living situation. And then in that 10 minutes, if there's something, most of the time we discover, excuse me, things that people are already working on. So you could already add that to the game plan and say, oh my gosh, I love that you're taking walks with your kids. That's so amazing. In fact, taking walks with your kids is one of the very best things you can do for your physical and mental health. So you're already, got a great start. I'm constantly trying to look for things that folks are already doing. The other thing that we have on here is the bird in the hand rule. So that's what I was talking about earlier, that if you have a warm handoff here and you have a scheduled patient, I take the warm handoff and I ask the scheduled patient to wait. Because if you turn down a warm handoff, and actually we've seen it happen where it's 10 minutes before, maybe it's 3:50, right? And there's a 4 o'clock patient schedule. Handoff comes, BHC turns down the warm handoff, and then the patient no-shows. You went from being able to see 2 people to seeing no people. So a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. So our idea is the minute somebody shows up, and if they show up for their 4 o'clock appointment and it's 3:50, I go and I get that patient right then and there, because as long as I have somebody here, I should be seeing them, because it's going to allow me to get back on the floor sooner to be more available for warm handoffs. Yeah, you can't get reimbursed for that 10-minute visits. They're just, yeah, it's just eaten. Anything that's not 16 minutes is not billable. The interesting thing is a huge percentage of the time that patients say they have 10 minutes, they actually have a lot longer. They're just they're doing a trial run. They're seeing if they like the service that you're offering. And so I would say 90% of the time when a patient says they only have 10 minutes, they actually have longer. Uh, they just are seeing whether or not they want to meet with you. And it gets to the point sometimes like where it happens so rarely where they can't stay that like every once in a while they really do need to leave and they're like, no, I seriously need to leave. And you're like, oh, okay, my bad. I'm just so used to so many people not actually leaving. The only time I would only have 10 minutes is if I had already taken, like, say in that example with the warm handoff, say it's 4 o'clock, I take a warm handoff, I tell my 4 o'clock patient to wait, and um, somebody wanted, I guess another handoff came in. But even in that case, I might not be able to take that because like I'm okay with being 20 minutes behind, but once you start getting like 40 minutes behind, that starts not being tenable. The only way I would only have 10 minutes would be, I guess, if I was trying to fit two warm handoffs in or trying to fit something in on a situation. Um, but yeah, that bird in the hand rule is very difficult for folks to make that adjustment to. Once you make the adjustment, it's super fun. I think it's super fun. And patients, I mean, they give a lot of grace. They understand that you're trying to do the best that you can. They understand that you're seeing other patients. And most of the time, I've had patients be just very understanding and saying, "Oh, no, this is great. I'm glad that we were able to get at least something done." That the other thing is the ownership, right? Having that ownership that in the traditional world, everything is coming through you. You have to do everything. When really, maybe somebody on your team can fax something for you. Maybe somebody on your team can answer something. Maybe their follow-up visit is with their PCP for an antidepressant medication, and then you'll see them after, like, 2 weeks after that. So that's another really big shift. Um, we talked a little bit about that productivity already. That it's high. I know it can be controversial, and people feel a certain negative way about saying high productivity, but the way I look at it and the way I explain to my team as the director is, listen, the more patients we see, the bigger impact we can have, which is mission aligned. If we have better financials as a result of it, like, that just means we're going to hire more BHCs. And the more BHCs we hire, the more patients we can serve. And so my team knows about our finances. They know about productivity expectations. They know, and I tell it to them before they actually just start an interview process to see if everybody's okay with it. I think that if productivity is used in a punitive manner, that's not very inspiring, and that doesn't really work very well. But I think it's important for us to be transparent, and I think it's very important for us as clinicians to see the patient. Dr. Bauman and I joke constantly that when we have our newbies, it's really rough on them, because they don't have all the information, or they're getting thrown into a situation where there's not a clear referral reason, all these different things. And, they can spend 5, 10, 15 minutes trying to figure it out, not going in to see the patient. And we're like, part of this work is go in and see the patient. Everything's not going to be perfect. Primary care is messy. You're entering a messy system. It's not we want it to be messy on purpose per se, but again, you're serving a high volume of patients. So there's going to be some inherent messiness. So that's one of the things I find myself saying all the time is go see the patient. The other thing that's so fun in your role, instead of it being private and solo, is that you get to share that information with your PCPs. Like I was saying about the love work play, we're constantly sharing a person's contextual interview. The other thing that we're doing is we have a little section at the bottom of all of our notes. It's called PCP recommendations. We're giving a 2 to 3 sentence conceptualization of what's going on. And then we normally give one or two lines about what we recommend for how to treat them in visits. So we might say something like, patient is very self-motivated. Thus, collaborative treatment planning would work really well. Or advice giving isn't going to be the most helpful in this situation. as patient is very clear about their goals. So, and then you put in parentheses, here's their main goals. So inquire before making suggestions. You might say, hey, at your next visit, definitely check in on the person's work situation. Has this been something stressful for them? So that PCP recommendations of our notes, we literally are like writing it back to the PCP team. And that's super fun to be able to do. And it reminds you that you're not just there doing solo work, you're doing this work together. Productivity expectation, how many patients? Yes. I actually do have a PCBH corner on just how many visits should you see. The short answer is 8 or more in a day. That's the short answer. It gets very, very nuanced. But if you go into YouTube and say, Beachy Bauman, how many BHC visits in a day, there will be a PCBH corner that will come up and give you the nuanced version. The short version is 8 to average. And we all know that there's days that there's 12 and there's days that are 6. So you're going to want to average. And in our system, you're going to want to average a little bit more than 8, but that's because we give them a little bit more admin time. So in our PCBH corner, we do go over that in detail. This is kind of a side, though. Seems very much like an example of how to promote interprofessionality. Yeah. Yep. That's not an aside. That's a billion% spot on. We want to get to the point with our role as psychologists that you're not going to see a psychologist when there's something wrong necessarily, or when you have a diagnosis necessarily, that it's routine. The same way you go see your PCP. We have checkups, we have check-ins. It's not only when something is wrong. We want to be preventative. We want to address acute situations. We want to address chronic situations, changes in life, seasons of life, graduations, new jobs, new kids. We have an OB workflow, which is so awesome. Basically, all the parent get offered during their nursing visit for their OB visit. They get offered an appointment with the BHC right then and there, like on demand, because we know that bringing in another member of the family is always going to be a transition. And that's a big shift too. Using moments versus it necessarily being time-based and being very flexible in this one at a time approach. So the cool thing about this is that you guys might already know this from your studies. The mode number of visits that folks come in for any type of psychotherapy is 1. The most common scenario is they're going to come in for 1 visit. So we all live in a fantasy land, or we're living in a fantasy land where we're going to do all this information gathering in the first visit and do nothing with it. The most common scenario is they're going to come in for 1, and that's across private practice, hospital systems, primary care. So the whole idea is, if you have 1 shot with somebody to get to know them via some CI information, contextual interview information, get something done, and knowing that that might be the only time you see them. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't see them back for a follow-up. You absolutely can. It just means that you're going to treat that visit as a complete experience unto itself. And so I put some information about that 1 at a time approach, because that's very helpful to start thinking about. Instead of thinking about, hey, this is 1 of 12 visits, this is 1 of 8 visits, this is 1 of 4 visits. Thinking about, this is 1 of 1 visit. You get 1 shot. Now, if they come back for another visit, then we can think about that other visit when you're prepping and doing your chart prep. And when you poll patients and say, what kind of mental health care do you want? They want access that's right away. They want to feel seen and they feel heard. They want it to be flexible. They want options. They want autonomy. They want solutions. They want emphasis on psychohealth, not psychopathology. This is from Jessica Scheidler's work at a single session therapy work. And this isn't for primary care per se, but how well does it work? Like, my gosh, it's almost like it was written for primary care. And really, don't get too caught up on the term single session therapy. Think about it as taking things 1 at a time, 1 visit at a time. Any visit you might have with a patient, whether it be 10 minutes, whether it be 28 minutes, 30 minutes, heck, maybe it's 40 minutes, it went a little bit long, who knows? Just knowing that something good could come from a visit. Because that's already what's happening in primary care. You will save yourself a world of hurt, just getting into that perspective of how can I help right away. Okay, I'm realizing not doing the best on time, although that is kind of our last slide because I had them a little bit not out of order, but so I can touch on something and go back to it. So the only slide we didn't talk about was functional contextualism. Definitely have PCBH corners on this. Definitely recommend it. It's just the idea that folks don't do stuff for no reason. Every behavior has a context. So if you want to know why somebody's doing something or not doing something, go to their context, which is why we're so big on the contextual interview. And then the last slide that I do have on here is just a list of common barriers that we see in integrated care and for things that really trip up new folks that are getting started. And then I mapped it to the GATHER acronym and mapped it to a strategy in reverse. So if somebody only sees folks that are, I only work with adults, but they work at a full spectrum family medicine clinic, that's going to be tough. If people don't know where to find you and you're in a separate office located down the hall, that's going to be an issue. If your visits are constantly going 40 or more minutes over and over and over again, or you're spending more than 15, 20 minutes on your chart notes, people are going to be like, hey, where's that BHC? You know, are you really engaging in activities that are going to have the biggest return on investment? If you're not telling telling the medical team where you are and how long it'll be until you can take the warm handoff and you just say, well, I'm in with a patient, I consider that kind of an obscure response. They're going to learn to not utilize you. They're going to learn, you know, this person isn't reliable. I can't get a hold of them. Isolating, loss and obscurity. If you insist on a different set of rules, if the whole team works through lunch, and maybe not the whole lunch, but 15 minutes into lunch, but you're very strict on your boundaries. Now, here's the thing. I know that's very controversial. I'm not saying not to have boundaries. I'm not saying that it's wrong that if you have a 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock lunch to take your lunch. I'm just saying if everybody in the entire system is working till 12:15 and you refuse to help at 12 o'clock, your team might just not see you as one of them. So you have to make the decision for yourself. And again, I know this is very controversial and I know it's very nuanced. And I feel like some people might leave here and be like, well, Dr. Beachy said I can't take my lunch. I'm just saying that your practices should look like the rest of your members of your team if you want to be seen as members of the team. What I tell our team is if you get a break, take a break. Take a break as often as you want at any time. If you get 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, as long as they can find you via Microsoft Teams. So say you only got a 30-minute lunch instead of an hour, then take 3 10-minute breaks if you can in the morning or in the afternoon or wherever you can. The whole point is you want to look like the rest of the team. And again, you're going to have to make that decision for yourself. There are times where we have to have a boundary. I'm just saying it could seem like, you're not as one with the team. Again, I know it's controversial. Turning down visits is a really good way to have them not see you as a member of the team. Getting stuck on what patients need, saying that, oh, I can't help with this, talking about what you can't do instead of what you can do, that will be another situation that might be difficult. Operating independently. So if you and the medical provider have a patient on the same day and you just take them without letting the medical team know where they are, that could be difficult. And frequent call outs, not communicating, absences in advance. Those are all ways that could be barriers. So I know we got 5 minutes left. Questions, thoughts, happy to move the slide. Like you said, they're going to be able to give you guys access to all these slides so you can look at it in more detail. Questions, thoughts? I think we did what we said we were going to do. We got gather, we got 4 C's, we got way more than 3 differences and way more than 3 strategies. Yeah, other questions? Did I miss any, Chase, in the chat?
I think you covered everything. We probably have one a moment for one question, just for the sake of time. If anyone has anything, please unmute yourself um, and begin to talk over me. But if I don't hear someone, I just want to thank you and thank everyone for coming today. I'm definitely going to be working on my love work play light tattoo. As I so thank you for that. Um, and there was a question if how is this going to be available? The recording and the PowerPoint are going to be available on the Society for Health Psychology's website under resources. And the CE um, will be open until Thursday, July 18th, 2024, but please respond promptly to the link so we can get that out to you. And, even if you're not seeking credit, we crave your feedback. So please provide us an evaluation, kind of let us know what you think, what you need. And feel free to email any of us, including our speaker who's made herself available. And overall, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Beachy.
Yeah, so no, this was super fun. Sorry I didn't leave as much time for questions. We were answering them as we went, so we were on a roll here.
Excellent.
My
Well,
voice
again,
held up. I got nervous a couple times if it was gonna give out on me, but we made it.
well done. Well done. We'll hang out for just a moment, but we'll be thoughtful of your time as well.